Seb, your first impressions of this 24-man roster for that crucial game against Mexico in the CONCACAF Nations League semifinal?
It's a pretty good roster, Mal. It's a pretty good roster. I'm impressed. I don't know if with the depth, but the potential depth, because a lot of these guys are not proven yet, right? There's a lot of talent, a lot of potential, but they don't have a lot of caps. That said, it's a really good team. I rattled off the 8 injured guys. We forgot Kellen Acosta as well. I mean, that's a lot of injured guys. And you look at this team, there's still a lot of quality. 13 players from the World Cup, and most importantly, 8 guys that started all 4 games. So the significant core of your World Cup team is going to be back. Now, the obvious big issue, the black cloud, is no Tyler Adams.
Yeah.
That's going to make you more vulnerable, and that's going to be compounded by no Cameron Carter-Vickers and no Tim Reen. So you're going to be more vulnerable than you probably were at the World Cup. But you are also, because you've now got Folarin Balogun, going to be more lethal, going to be more clinical. And in tournament football, I think that matters just as much. I think this is a really, really good team for the U.S. It's a really young team, 25 years. I think 24 and change is the average age. And you've got 11 players now that didn't play in the World Cup. This team had a pretty good World Cup and was pretty young. They didn't need a lot of turnover. Yeah. They're still showing the depth here. This is a really good team for the U.S., I think.
It is a very balanced roster. That's what I like about it. When you mention all the players that are absent due to injuries and the fact that you can come up with a 24-player roster that looks like this, that has all that previous experience that you just mentioned and explained, looking at it from the Mexican national team point of view, I'm concerned. And we'll talk about Mexico in a few minutes. But when I look at this U.S. roster, I go like, they are in way better shape. And I understand the manager situation is important, and that's gonna get handled in the upcoming weeks. But as it turns out, the players and the roster, it is in a very good shape. Do you agree?
Yeah, and I think you can see the differences in the approaches, too, between Mexico and the U.S. It seems like everything we're hearing right now, Mao, is that the U.S. is going to go all in on the CONCACAF Nations League. There may be some carryover from Nations League to Gold Cup, but not nearly as much as we're expecting for Mexico. Mexico seems to view these competitions evenly. U.S. Soccer saying Nations League 1 and a pretty far second, Gold Cup.
All right, we already talked about who's included in this roster, who's not due to injuries, but let me ask you about snubs, specifically in the center back position. Who's the biggest snub? Mark McKenzie or John Brooks?
Well, it depends what you're looking for. If you want to win now, it's John Brooks. If you're looking to build for the future, it's McKenzie. Here's the bottom line, though, is I'm shocked that not at least one of these two, Mao, got a call-up, considering what I just told you about the issues that the U.S. has at center back. It's not just the injuries, which are significant. Cameron Carter-Vickers started against Iran. Tim Reen was a full-time starter at the World Cup. But your other World Cup starter, Walker Zimmerman, is not having his best season right now. And Austin Trusty is a guy who's coming off a good season, but is a virtual unknown at the senior international level. So given all of that, all of those question marks in the center defense, I thought you would have gotten at least one of these two dudes who are in really good form into the camp. If you're asking me to pick one between the two, I will go with John Brooks based on experience. 1, higher level 2, he's doing it in the Bundesliga compared to the Belgian league, with all due respect to what Mark McKenzie's been able to accomplish. And the other thing here is he's a left-footed center back. We know that those guys don't grow on trees, and he gives you tactical versatility. He can obviously play as the left center back in a back 4, but if you want to go with a back 3, he could be your left kind of outside back, or he could be your center back, which is what we saw him play, the center back in a back 3 at Hoffenheim. And Pellegrino Matarazzo on this show told us how big a part of Hoffenheim staying up John Brooks and his leadership were in that role. So I would have thought one of those two gets in. I would have thought Brooks probably has a slightly stronger case because he plays in the Bundesliga, but don't sleep on McKenzie. Because not only has he had a good season, his team's having a great season, and he's a center back right now, Mao, who is scoring goals. And this was his reaction on Instagram, putting up the Nick Young meme. He was pretty bitter, so I'm not the only one that thinks that he got snubbed. And by the way, who coached him at the Philadelphia Union? B.J. Callahan.
Yeah.
I bet that was an awkward phone call.
Yeah, I agree with John Brooks. That's a head scratcher, especially when you consider that you can have him for that Nations League 2 games, and then you can set him off for their summer break considering that the U.S. men's national team will have a different roster for gold. Now, how crucial, right? How crucial is to not miss when you name center backs for this game specifically against Mexico.
Yep. We'll see. I mean, some big questions there for BJ Callahan. As far as John Brooks is concerned, he was on the list of 60, so maybe still a shout and a hope there for the Gold Cup.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.